Next item is consider a request to receive an update from the Special Assessment Task Force, and I believe Commissioner Sponskowski, are you going to start us out?
I believe so. Some of you are familiar with what we've been doing in the last few months. We have a Special Assessments Task Force that we developed probably about 10 months ago, and since then we consolidated down to approximately 5 members of that task force. Since that time, we've looked at the potential language for a ballot measure, and then we also looked at a lot of the logistical issues that would surround moving over to a possible fee-structured system. We looked at different tier type systems, we looked at infinite tier type systems, and trying to really work this through with city staff and try to make this something that is viable and doable for the city. Attached, you'll see a lot of the information that we have come up with, a lot of the wordage that we've come up with as well. Pretty much each and every single word within that proposal was looked at and thought about to be meaningful and have as much weight as possible. So kind of scrolling down here, the expenditure assumptions annually approximately $20 million for street improvements, and then $7 million for street maintenance, existing special assessments for debt repayment. A pretty common theme with the Special Assessments Task Force was that desire for us to assume the current special assessments debt payment along with this, so that everybody can start on equal footings, as equal as possible at least. We also thought about potentially having those who currently have special assessments continue paying on those special assessments, but we looked at that and it just didn't seem like a very viable option. So that's kind of what we're looking at there. There's going to be 2 different classes as set right now, or 3 different possible. So the residential class, which would be 1, 2, and 3 unit residential buildings, and then multifamily, which would be apartments or manufactured home parks, and then non-residential. Non-residential is pretty much everything that's not residential or multifamily class. Currently, the revenue split would be 40% residential, 60% non-residential for the payment of that total amount due. That's kind of the direction that the current task force was leaning towards, and something that's hopefully doable by everybody. So if you go down to the bottom 2 pages here, you'll see a couple different options. The ones circled in red are the ones that the overall task force was leaning towards the most. There's a lot of, and these are kind of, these individual properties kind of give you an estimate of what those properties would be paying per month for those. So kind of just a quick recap, and if I get anything wrong, Keith can possibly correct me. So what this is it is the fee infrastructure, basically monthly bill. It would be covering curb to curb. That's what it'd be, street maintenance fee. So it covers curb to curb. It wouldn't be covering certain things like sidewalks, stuff like that would currently still be a special assess, but this is street maintenance fee, so curb to curb and everything down from there. So this first one here, as we'll see, is the commercial examples. We tried a few different examples for the tiered system, and then also what we were calling the infinite tiered system, or the infinite variable system as well, trying to come up with different options and different variations that would possibly work for everybody. The next one is the residential, or the condo example. There's the 6 tiers, 4 tiers, and then the last few here are also the infinitely variable options. These are simply recommendations from the Special Assessments Task Force, and any considerations or concerns that you guys may have will obviously definitely be taken into consideration.
Commissioner?
Mayor, Commissioners, so Commissioner Sponskowski, I'll ask the first question that jumps at me when you bring up the word tier.
Mm-hmm.
I have a small problem with the word tier. So explain to me why, I thought previously we were just going to have a flat rate for residential. And it doesn't, unless I'm interpreting this incorrectly, it doesn't appear that way.
Well, currently, what's presented here before you is the recommendation of the Special Assessments Task Force that they're voted on as a whole. Me personally, I'm not against a straight fee as well, either. That would be, I believe that would look like approximately $28 per residential household. That may be incorrect. That's approximately where it's, if I remember right, that's where approximately it would be setting. And if that's something that the commission desires to look into further, that's definitely an option. What basically is presented here before you was the voted on recommendation of the task force.
To
Go ahead.
potentially give a little more insight to that, I could have Dustin Gryla come up forward. He has been part of both the smaller task force and the larger task force. Maybe he can help address some of those questions, Commissioner Zinkar, that you might have around why the task force landed where it did, if that's helpful.
Yes. For the record, Dustin Geverlow. The idea, so we've been discussing many ways to do this. We came up with the idea of just setting up on the sheet a comparison of multiple tier approach versus a per square foot rate that would be a flat rate per square foot. When this whole process started 5 years ago, when we were talking about a flat rate, we were talking about a per dwelling unit value, that no matter what kind of dwelling unit you had, you would pay the same. That does not necessarily work because it overly punishes and charges mobile home and apartment dwellers. It does not account for different size variations of the of lots. And so when Commissioner Spolankowski uses the term infinitely variable, that's one of our inside the room phrases, but it's really a flat square footage rate. So you take your square footage of your lot and you apply a dollar value, or it would be cents per square foot per month. And for residential, it would be one. For commercial, it would be another. And the only exceptions to that would be the apartment and mobile home units would be at a $7 per unit rate. That way we're not overcharging those, because in a situation where, say, mobile home park is a lot of square footage. So if you actually went based off of a strict square footage, you would be overcharging those properties by a significant amount, and obviously they're not necessarily in the best position to pay a higher rate. And the approach of this, when it comes to those especially, while there are some downsides to this for them, the upside is that there's been this long-standing argument and criticism of the way that specials are applied towards mobile home parks, in that they are charged as if they are commercial. This would actually give them a better treatment than residential. So part of the complaint on that would be resolved partially. Obviously, there's always something to complain about. But, when we look at these rates, I think that we all kind of were looking at, if you have a system, you've either got to have it staggered, like a bracketed tier system, or just a straight value per square foot, and apply that. You have your caps as far as the maximum amount that would be allotted per parcel, and then also some minimums, and those minimums would coincide with the $7 rate that we were discussing on the apartments and mobile homes. So if you don't want to do tiers, then the square footage approach is the way to go. If you want to stay away from that sort of vernacular, then that is the way to go. When it comes down to being able to sell it. It is a flat rate per square footage. It's not flat rate per parcel, but at least there is a mathematical calculation to get to that value.
Commissioner Zinker.
So, Mayor, Commissioners, and Dustin, so in theory, then, the bigger the lot, the more you pay, right?
Yes.
And I think that was kind of the item that we wanted to get away from, because it happens the same way on a special assessment. The bigger the lot, well, it's linear foot, or Gabe probably could recite that by heart, but, so I don't know if that's really, I'll be fair or equal. I mean, I can guarantee, as the five of us sit at this table, that I'm the person who's got the most vehicles in his driveway, just because of the age of my children currently. So, but there's a pretty good chance that I don't have the biggest lot, but hey, thanks for helping me out, type thing, right? So that's why I think we need to, we steered away. Man, after our last meeting, I really thought it was going to be one rate coming out. This is the rate it's going to be for single-family home, and we're moving forward. But I think, personally, I think we've kind of gone backwards with this tier system or square foot price or square foot lot thing. I don't feel comfortable with that.
As a task force and as a subcommittee, we have gone backwards and forwards many times on this within our own groups, one meeting to the next. You know, when we started this whole process 5 years ago, we wanted to create a mechanism to develop a user fee type of model, but we kind of couldn't agree on how to calculate that. We don't have a very good way to measure who's really using it. So we had to go away from that concept and use, you know, the lot square footage as a alternative, as a substitute value. And so we knew that there would be some consternation about the idea of using a bracketed progressive model for the charges. There was, I mean, it's cleaner when you do it as far as with brackets, but as you're saying, you know, you got people that are going to be upset because there's cutoffs as far as where somebody might land as on the size of their lot, and that is a difficulty. I mean, it comes down to what can people understand and what is a better solution. You know, we've developed the language that would end up being put into the Home Rule Charter if the commission goes down that road, that would allow this plan to be more fine-tuned. As a subcommittee and as a task force, we just wanted to at least put on paper some notion of what we are looking at and give people an idea roughly. I think that there's still got to be a process that narrows it down as far as what people will support. And the question is whether these sorts of concepts are enough for you as commissioners to proceed down this road, or whether you want to do something else. And so as a subcommittee and as a task force, I think that we've done what we can on this issue, at least without any further guidance as far as what you want to see as a commission.
So, because I was a part of this task force as well up until like 2 weeks ago. As part of that, when we were looking at it, I mean, we struggled. I mean, flat rate seems real simple and across the board, but to be concerned about how this might land with the residents of the city and whether or not we would find a punitive state on the lower end of the spectrum, which is where we were concerned at. I think we could live with 3 tiers. I think that's a possibility. the cutoff is always the hard part. Honestly, if we get right to the core of the group, the middle section of the lot sizes, let's say, that's probably 80% of the residents' homes, and that's pretty close to where that 20 to 28 or $29 per lot falls. It was the outer edges where it seemed like the extremes were. And so we as a task force wanted to get something forward to the commission so we could start to move this forward. So if we're going to be able to address it, we can get the home rule charter ballot language potentially on the ballot for November, knowing that an ordinance is going to have to follow, which would actually lay out the actual process more clearly and succinctly. And so that's where we were coming from, and I think I speak for the other commissioner here who was on that task force as well. That we just need to get something moving. If we don't move it, it's going to stay where we're at, and trying to eliminate the special assessment process. So I think we're open to how that could be more clearly defined, as whether it's one tier or 6 tiers. I think 6 tiers gets to be, it's a lot, we know that.
And we as a task force are not saying that these are necessarily, this is not the perfect solution, obviously, but the greater question is, are these concepts better than the way that we do things now?
Correct.
You know, it comes down to, just because we've always done it a certain way, does that mean it's the right way to do it? This entire discussion started out based on the lots of complaints that you guys and the city staff get on special assessments, and so, you know, this is the best that we could come up with. And I think that when it comes down to whether the public and the voters agree, it will be determined by whether they like these ideas better than the current system, and they may not. But let's have a discussion. We've kind of been teasing the voters on this issue for many years, and you know, I think it's time to throw this out there for them, and say this is roughly what we're looking at doing. If you approve this language to give the city the ability to go down this road, we'll fine-tune it more. And we all discussed on the subcommittee that we want to have extensive public input, not just the bare minimum required by law, but a lot of meetings where we get people to put in their 2 cents and get an idea of where people really are.
Thank you, Dustin. So we're here to see where we want to take next steps with this, or not.
One more question, Mayor,
Sure.
Commissioners. So when you came up with this calculation, what was the percentage of that special assessment that could be assessed, right? We have different levels of special assessment. We have just a mill and overlay, we have reconstruction, and then we have a scrub seal type thing, and there's different levels of participation from the city. So how did this monthly fee on this current tier system figure into that? Was it 60% of that on a monthly, you know, so if they had a $600 a year payment over X amount of years, is it something, I mean, was there a calculation that was done with that or not?
So the Commissioner Zinker, the calculation was based on what do we need currently to fund these, what is the budgeted special assessments across the city on an annualized basis? No 60-40 split around.
Compare it to.
So, but then we have done some comparisons to what this monthly fee would look like compared to what their annual installment would be on their special assessments, knowing that one time there might be one application applied, the next time it might be a different application, and ultimately we may have to do a complete rebuild, depending on what the status of that road is under the maintenance plan. it's, I don't think there's any perfect scenario here. We had to come up with a dollar amount that we thought was going to be necessary to fund those special assessments that are currently coming into the city.
So with that dollar amount, once you did the multifamily and manufactured homes and commercial, whatever those remaining parcels are, and however you figured those other two categories, and you divided it by residential lots, what was the monthly? What was the monthly bill?
For just residential?
Right.
So
If it was
currently,
split equally, one flat rate, what was that?
so currently, under this current one, the 60%, the commercial properties take on 60% of the debt load, of that $20 million.
Yep, I'm
And the
with you.
residential takes on 40%. And under this current way of doing it, it was sitting right around that, I believe it was $28.
$28 or $29 a month.
Yep.
So everybody would get charged 28.
Yep, but it doesn't matter if you're living in a mobile home, in a condo, in a house, but by approximately that $28 a month.
Okay. So did anybody go one step further and then take out the category with the manufactured homes and the multifamily living out of that 40% and then divide that out of the parcels of residential properties?
As in the mobile home park and the condos not paying anything, or
No,
it's a
they're
slower
paying
portion?
this $7 fee. And I kind of get that, and that makes a little sense. I think it might be a little on the light side, just because if you have a 36-unit apartment and you're charging each unit $7, that's about 250 some bucks a month, right? Somebody check that math so I don't mess that
Sure.
up. Right? And then 12 months, it's 2,500, and another, it's like $3,000 a year. Okay, so I'm assuming from a vehicle count perspective, there's at least one, right? So for $3,600, there's 36 or $3,000. There's 36 living units that we're trying to get rid of special assessments, so our entire city can function and have safe streets and get rid of some of the potholes and some of those maintenance items that come up, so we can scrub seal sooner. And they're only paying $3,000 and 36 units of living, and then other ones are paying, if you use your tiered system here with the bigger lots, at $56 a piece. That's $560. I mean, they're paying about almost a third of that $3,000, so to speak. Or no, not quite. A little less. Anybody got a calculator? Do that math quick.
Well, you can't use your phone, Janelle will yell at you.
I got the math thing if IT left my calculator on here. Or did you do that?
22%.
So that residential property is paying 22% of that $3,000. Was my $3,000 number right? $3,024. So if we take that 56 times 12, 672, and divide it into that, he's paying 22% of that. That just doesn't, or that person, that homeowner is paying 22%. I think that might be a little light.
So you'd be in favor of the condos or mobile homes paying more?
More than the $7. Yeah.
And so,
Right, so here's what we got to think about, okay? We have to think about that our streets, granted, I don't drive on Avenue A every day, I don't drive up in Promontory Point every day, but we're trying to come up with a system that nobody else has got, so it takes a little bit more heavy lifting, where we can get through every part of our city and scrub seal, maintenance items, curb to curb. And there's got to be some way that we can figure it out, that there's some equitableness in this, and not charging different homeowners different prices just because their lot's bigger than somebody's on San Angelo where I live, or whatever, versus Promontory or Silver Ranch or whatever those are. It's just it's an entire network that we all need sometime, someplace, however we want to do it. And I don't like I think it's inequitable that there's different homeowners paying different prices for that. And I get we can't pay per vehicle, because how do you keep track of that? You know, unless it's all collected by the state or, that's probably more legislation that's got to happen. But I think there has to be more of a strategic approach to figuring out a flat fee.
So Commissioner Zinker, Commissioner Markort, or Smuskowski, I don't know that there's necessarily a negative pushback to that concept. I can't remember if we ran the numbers, what happens if we just carved out the mobile home parks and the apartments and gave them a separate rate. Again, that's probably as a percentage of the total dollars, a pretty small piece. And if we flatten out the rest of the residential that are non-apartment or non-multifamily and non-mobile home, you're probably going to still press that rate, I would guess, close to the $28 range per house, because the top end really isn't very many homes. Because I looked at that number, and it doesn't really move the monthly rate very far if you said make them all the same as everybody else. So if that's a direction that the commission would like to direct, I guess probably staff to move in the calculations. The task force wanted to put something forward to say, let's get this on the table and start moving it so we can get something to the ballot, essentially.
Well, and I'll say it again, and I've said it multiple times, I don't think we want to race to the ballot, because this has got to be a grand slam. This cannot be a single here, because we're going to get one opportunity to, I think, in my opinion, to get this passed to citizens, and it needs to be very easy for everybody to understand. So I would much rather see a flat rate on residential. And in the three different categories, I can understand that. From a multifamily to manufactured homes to commercial, sure, I can get that. Mm-hmm. But I would like to see too some of those commercial properties, what that bill is going to be, because all those commercial properties are going to pass that on to their consumers, and those consumers are the same people that, there might be some outside the city limits, but there's also some inside the city limits that are going to have to pay for this multiple times. So I just want that to be that cognizant too. So I'd like to see some more numbers showing different variations of what we have and what those percentages break out or what. Because we had those on the commercial side the last time, and the snap that I see here, I don't know if I mean, these are monthly revenues. It looks like there's a couple properties that are like $613 or $2,000. It's kind of with a different uncapped and capped, and the spreadsheet gets kind of out there. So I'd just like to see that simplified so we can understand that. And commercially, I don't know how you're going to do that from a square foot perspective either. You know, I would think that.
Yeah, commercial is its own different animal because
Right.
they vary so much. Residential is much easier to stay consistent because it doesn't vary as much. But you have, one small lot, and then you have Costco and everything in between. So, yeah, and Menards and all those big ones. And so that's why the commercial one is so much more diverse in how they're being charged and how we figure that part out.
Yeah,
But-
and we got to be cognizant too of schools and parks, right?
Yes, and
Because
we're
however-
very, very cognizant of those. So what would you would like to possibly see the potentiality of the multifamily class, residential class, and non-residential class, which would be commercial, industrial, any of those? Yep. Sure.
That's just my opinion. You can do whatever. Only one vote, Mark.
Mayor and Commissioners, I think one thing that, Greg makes a good point on, I think we need to see a little bit more of the information that's available instead of just some of the stuff here. So I think if we send it back to the task force with some of the information that Greg is requesting, and maybe show it a little bit different, simplify it, I think will help out as far as making that decision. Like Commissioner Zenker had mentioned, that we got one shot at this to take a look at it and move it forward. I think you guys are moving in the right direction, but there's some things that
we need to take a look at. So if you don't mind, I think that's, my suggestion would be to send it back to the task force and take Commissioner Zenker's recommendations.
Absolutely.
To the smaller,
To the
the sub-task
The
force.
sub-task force, yes.
I guess my question too would be then, are we just wanting that on the residential side? Like where it's just single family, multifamily, versus the commercial? I understand where you're coming from with the residential. You know, you can't guarantee that just because they have a big lot that they drive on the streets more than somebody who lives on a small lot. But with the commercial, when you're looking at the scale of space, potentially excluding parks, the bigger the space, the more traffic a commercial place is going to bring in. I mean, when you think of like cars that are driving to it, a lot more cars are driving to Costco than they are to a tiny little 1,000 square foot space. So maybe that, you know, square footage breakdown, the green column, maybe makes more sense on the commercial side than it does on the residential side. Just a thought.
I mean, yeah, that's why we have these discussions, so we can think out loud, so to speak. And then I think the other thing before we get to, we can really dissect into the home rule charter, we need to know what our base points or our financial side of things are gonna be, so. But I do agree with Commissioner Cleary that the challenge from a commercial perspective is, hey, what's your impact, you know, quote unquote, on the street footprint, so to speak. So, yeah, that will be difficult, so I wish you all the best.
Thanks.
Very quick, I would suggest that perhaps a convergence of the commission under open meetings where the commission and the subcommittee would do like a workshop together, I think, so that we can, in an open meeting, discuss all the things that we've gone through so that you have a better idea on it. This is the problem. When we started this process, we talked about doing a user fee. This is not a user fee anymore. The idea of this business generates this much traffic, we set that to the side. And mainly because it's very difficult to figure that portion out. For various reasons, we all kind of had our own problems with the studies that had been done on those traffic numbers. So I think that the best way for you as commissioners to understand this is to get in a room with us and have staff show you the same sorts of things we've been going through. Maybe put it, you know, block off 3 hours to do it and hope we can get through it.
Yeah.
At the worst case scenario, I'm just saying, you know, we've how many hours do you think we've done? We've well over 200 hours collectively. So it is kind of mind numbing in some ways because it's really in the weeds. But I think that you need to have a very focused conversation on it and understand it from that avenue.
So I guess I need to understand for sure what our wishes are here. What directives are we giving?
Well, actually, it's not a bad idea if we all got together, just 10 of us, right?
Yes.
Well, not really, because you two guys are still on it, so
Right.
it's like 8.
And is that something that we can discuss and set up at this meeting, or is that,
It's gonna take yeah, I can.
yeah.
If it's not on my calendar, right.
Scheduled people, but yeah,
Right.
the whole special assessment task force.
No, I think just the,
Just the core group.
just the
And you want
subcommittee.
staff to be there too, so.
Yeah,
Right.
just the group of 5 staff and then the commission, the full commission. That would be what I would want, was I would love for you guys to be there. That way you can get instant feedback on your questions. Gabe can run the numbers and you can see exactly what that scenario would look like.
Yeah, Commissioner Spilka, I would agree actually, because that's been part of the struggle we've had, because literally, I think week to week, we have flipped some things around and said it doesn't, so
Okay.
just to have,
Administration can schedule it
Okay.
with the members, finding their availability as well as yours.
okay, so
Okay.
then that's our,
After the 4th of July, I'm assuming.
yes.
Yes.
That's our request
Yeah.
then, so.
Yeah.
This has been good discussion. I think it has helped at least to get some understanding on the table, so
Absolutely.
thank you for that.